Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this wonderful special session we have today. Today I'm your host, Thendo Ravhengani, and I'm joined today by a very special guest, someone we had to work very hard to get, ladies and gentlemen. We had to pay big bucks to get him here. Just by the God's grace that we are able to get him. Director of Living Power himself, Mashudu Ravhengani. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Today we are talking about parenting, as you all know. The guest today has had a number of achievements. He's a published writer, has been to America. In fact, he's been to all of the continents except for South America and Australia. But what I really want to speak about is that he said, and I heard it once or twice, that his greatest achievement are his children. Please tell us a little bit about that, sir.
Thank you very much, Thendo. Thendo is our associate speaker and director of Living Power, and he is with us here for the first time, hosting the show, driving the show. Indeed, one of the pleasures of life is, for me, is to be a parent, to be a father. It is something that I consider a calling, something that touches and blesses my soul. To see these little babies, whom each of them, I was there in the room when they were born. Each of them, I was there when they were born. I was in the room. I was one of the first people to carry them in my hands, and to see them grow, changing their diapers, bathing them, and seeing them grow to become adults. It is a great pleasure, and to see their characters, their own different gifts, their different abilities. It warms my heart. It uplifts me, and I was saying the other day that sometimes when they look up to me, it is that look that also uplifts me and lifts me to become even determined to become a better person, to become a better example to your lives, all of you.
Thank you. Caught me off guard there.
You are so much into listening to what is going on.
I was a little chuffed there, Before we carry on with the rest of the session, which is a question and answer session, I would like to just say something on the topic, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I'd just like to read from the Bible in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 22 verse 6, it's a common text. I'll read in your hearing. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, children should not be left to do what they want. They must be directed into a path, especially when they're young and their minds are still fragile. There's actually a saying that a young twig must be burnt early. Like a young mind is flexible when it's young, but when it's older, it's hard to mold it when it's older. I don't want to steal too much from what you're going to be speaking about, but before we continue, would you like to add anything else to the text?
Oh, the text is pregnant with parental meaning. It is the word train, even though I'm not very proficient in original language, we understand it's chanak, which means to put something in the mouth, the way you put reins in a horse. So it is almost like when you say train up your child, is to put reins in the horse. And you know that when you put reins on the horse, the mouth is very sensitive. So when you pull a little bit to the right, it tends to the right. And you pull a little bit to the left, it tends to the left. So indeed, what the Bible is actually saying, it says, chanak your children, put the reins on them, be in control. Direct their path of life, direct the direction in which you do. So the children are, as you said, they're not supposed to be left to themselves. They're supposed to be directed. So God gives the parents the responsibility to put the reins, to train them, and so that they can be directed in the path of life. And because the understanding and the view is that as a parent, you know how the way that they should go, and as a result of that, you should then be able to guide them on the right path in which they should go. And I must say, Thendo, the tragedy that we see today, I don't know whether it has to do, unless we look into the 21st century and we should look at many challenges, is that instead of parents being in charge, being in control, putting reins on their children to chanak them, it almost seems like in many families the children are putting reins on their parents. The children are the ones who are now in control, particularly when they go to these former Model C schools. They start speaking English and all of those things, and the parents seems to be intimidated by the children and by the English, by the English with a bit of an accent. So so they start controlling them and dictating the terms on how the parents must behave, which is contrary to what the word is saying.
No, that is very true, and that is a sad situation we have, where the parents are almost scared to go against what the children say.
Yeah.
Because then they will not talk to them, or just being afraid of the kids.
Scary.
So to get into the question portions, thank you for the question portions of the session. Question 1 is, why is parenting critical and important in the 21st century? I think you touched on this, but just expand a little bit on that.
Parenting is more critical today more than ever before because of the kinds of influences that are there in society. We live in a very corrupt society, very defective society, and there is a need for effective parenting to counteract whatever issues that are happening in society today. We need parents to be more vigilant because, as you can see, issues of drugs, issues of alcohol is rife among young people, and they are getting them from a much more earlier age. And in reality, when we were growing up, there was a saying, probably a misinterpretation of the text, but the view was, the children can grow up and they can go their own ways, but when they're old, they'll come back to church. But the devil seems to have come up with a strategy to kill them while they're still young. So it's to corrupt them when they're young and make sure that they die before they get a chance to coming back. So what we need is effective parenting in the 21st century, which will make sure that the children don't even leave, because when they leave, they might never come back. So it is important to keep them here, and critical in the fact that everything that we have, it's against us. So as soon as we get our children outside in the streets, the tide of society is going the wrong way. So we need to train our children to go opposite the tide of society, because the tide of society is going towards destruction. So we need to get them to walk, to be able to go against the tide. And not only are we challenged by where they are at schools or in the streets, but even the tide of what is happening within the church. Because many times, as parents, have been too comfortable with the idea that, as long as my children are at church, the church environment is good for them. But only to find that in reality, in church, there can be influences from other young people that can come upon them and follow the same tide that is going towards destruction. So it is important so that we raise up children who are able to resist even the influences that are coming from within others within the church. I was going to talk about also the fact that television is another source of corruption that we are bringing into the home in terms of influences that are negative. And I won't tell the viewers that who are listening there that none of you ever had a television in the house. So. Yes, back to you.
That's true. But then again, it's a thing about also not just poor parenting, but also bad parenting.
Yeah.
In the sense that you could be a person who's involved in the children's lives, but in a negative way, in terms of teaching your children wrong things. Like a lot of the problems that we're having now in terms of racism starts at home, obviously.
Yeah.
And obviously men that are being abusive or whatever, it has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's hard to blame it on anything else than bad parenting or whatever. So that's why I think it's also very important in this 21st century. Thank you. The next question: can a father discuss sexuality with a daughter and mother with a son, or it should be done with the same sex?
That's a good question. And you know that when somebody says it's a good question, they are not sure how to handle it. It is a good question, and I think it is important for us to look at it. And I will say there is a need, obviously, for children to discuss issues of sexuality with their children, and it depends also on the depth of the details of that discussion, where it's going. If we are talking about joint, parenting, or one talking to the child of the opposite sex, so the level in which you go to. So I can talk to my daughter about boys and how mischievous that they are and what is running through their minds, and which is a knowledge that it is good for her to know. And a mother can talk with a boy about what runs in the mind of a girl and what makes the girls tick, and some of the things that kind of warnings on what you must not do and what you must not do with them, and to know their mindset and their thinking. But when you go down to the nitty-gritties of sexuality, it is obviously better to have one of the same sex to deal with them. Whether we are dealing with the issue of circumcision for the boys, the father being there dealing with those things, the mother dealing with the issues of girls and the menstrual sexual cycles and what it means and those things, it might be better to have somebody of the same sex. So it's both ways. On the higher level, you can benefit from a parent of the opposite sex. At the deeper level, it is probably better when one is dealing with the issue of somebody of the same sex. Obviously, that becomes a challenge on single parenting, where there is no other parent of the other sex to deal with that. And this is where, if there is an aunt or or somebody in the church, somebody you can trust with your children to guide them and to help them throughout those kind of issues.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. Next question is: there are often many criticism of children of church leaders and pastors, aka PKs, pastors' kids. Why do such children not turn out like their godly parents?
I'm not too sure whether it is a matter of fact or it's a stereotype that is often raised on PKs, or it is a matter of reality. And one can also look at it in different ways. Firstly, the devil is cunning, in attacking the ministry of the pastor. And if he cannot get the pastor, he might try the pastor's wife. And if he cannot get the pastor's wife, he will probably try to attack the pastor's children. And so that in that way, he finds a way of scoring, of making an impact, a negative one, on the issue of the children. In another way, maybe people might be expecting too much from PKs, that they are no longer children like any other children living in this world.
They have to be more
Above, yeah, they have to be more like their pastors, but it is their pastor who is a pastor.
Yeah.
They are not pastors, you know. So maybe the expectation, the standard is set a bit more higher for them, and unfairly so, because they are children living in the same environment. There are also instances where the pastors were not treated very well, and the children got to find out that the church members have not treated their pastor so well, and that displeased the children and ending up into rebellion. I would not want to think much about the idea that the pastor, which is one of the statements that are often made, that he might be focusing so much on the church and somehow neglecting his own home church, which is the family. I would not want to believe that to be true, but I would think the other issues that we've discussed has a bearing on that perception that we often have around pastors' kids.
Because it's sad, because it's not necessarily a lie. As you said, it's probably a stereotype, because a lot of pastors' kids do end up being a little rebellious. But there are some, good PKs and people who are, who don't fit in that stereotype. But
Yeah.
people normally be like, oh, you're a PK, so what do you do on the down low or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very interesting situation. Next question. What would you say are the main pillars of parenting?
I would say probably the first one, we have already talked about training up the child. In the week where you've explained the idea of how a young twig can be bent when it's early. I would say the second one will be practicing what you preach. Probably one of the most critical. The idea of parenting is more than just the idea of rules and instructions that are given to children, but it's about modeling that life for the children. It is often said that many parents are like road signs. If you come out of here, we are in this area, there will be a sign that says this is the direction to Pretoria, and this is the direction to Kempton Park. But that road sign has never been to Pretoria, but it has been pointing people to Pretoria for a long time. And many parents are like road signs. They speak what they don't live. They preach what they don't live. So in reality, they keep on telling you to go there, but they're not going there. So you can see a parent smoking, and he says, don't ever smoke. If you smoke, I'll kill you. But it's contrary, because what the parents fail to realize is that children might not be great listeners, but they're great imitators. Very much the children would like to be like their parents. Probably one of the most moving thing that I saw in the social media. We always have many things and which are not very useful, but this one it touched me. It is a father crossing the river with the son following, and he is stepping on the stones as he crosses the river, and then he says to the son, my son, watch where the stones are to step on the stones. And then the son turns back to the father. He says, Daddy, you watch where the stones are because I'm following on your footsteps.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm following where you're walking. And I think as parents, we tend to fail on that very critical issue. The idea of modeling life for those who come after us, to live a life in which they can follow. And somebody says, character cannot be taught, but can be caught.
Yes, sir.
So you don't teach character, you catch it. So it's almost like it rubs on you.
Yeah.
So if I'm here, I've got the right character, and as I come close to you, it rubs them, it catches them. As they see you in everyday life, as they see your behavior, your conduct, your actions, and as they see those are the things that becomes the model in which the children follow. And that's what is more critical. And I think parenting, we fail at that critical moment of modeling the life in such a way that it can be exemplary. We want them to be perfect as children, but we don't want to live a perfect life for them to see. And lastly, I would say one of the most critical issues also in parenting is developing a bond with the children, to create a bond. So you can almost imagine that if there is a parent being here and a child being here, it doesn't matter how holy the child is, how holy the parent might be. In order to transmit this, there must be a bond. And for that bond to happen, you can't legislate the bond. The legislation of the bond has to do with the time spent in connecting. It is always said that whoever has a strong bond with the child will influence the child.
Sure.
I always say to parents, watch it out when you're talking to a child and the child says, I said, please do this and that, and the child says, but my teacher says. The child has a stronger influence than you.
Yeah.
Or you'll hear sometimes they say, but my grandmother says. It says that my grandmother has got a stronger bond to influence. Or even worse, but my friends say.
Yeah.
That means my friends have a stronger influence on my character and my behavior than you have. So, and as I said, you can't legislate it. It's the time you spend together, whether you're playing, having fun, that creates that bond. The time you spend talking to each other, connecting with each other, doing things together, going out to restaurant and whatever it is, that time of bonding is what is critical and what is important.
No, that's very true. A lot of these things happen subconsciously, obviously. In terms of having a bond with someone, like when you automatically think about who you have a bond with more, it's fast and it's instant. Especially if, for example, if someone tells you something and you want to go spread this fact, you're able to trust the source because you trust the person.
Yeah.
Like, no, but my dad said this and this and this.
Yeah.
Or my mom said this and this and this. But if you come against, like, say, your parent by saying, no, but my friend said this and this, is what also shows the type of bond you have with your parents.
Yeah.
Which is very true. And the whole thing about preaching what you teach, practicing what you preach.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, you take what your parents do, and you want to be like your parents. Half of the time, it's not an active decision like I want to be like this person and whatnot. It's like this is someone that you see every day, and that is your role model.
Yeah. From
birth, when you start off and you see this person, and half of the time you could catch things that are not necessarily good, and that's on the parents' part. That's why it's very important, as you said, to always practice what you preach.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Sure.
Question 5 is a double question, and I'll read it. When we got married, my husband had a daughter who lived with his parents, but I didn't decide to get her to come live with us. When I tried disciplining her, my husband was not supportive, and this brought out a crisis in our marriage. What is the solution? And the second part is, as a step parent, how should I discipline my stepchild?
Step parenting is a challenge by itself. It's not easy. It's not easy to do to deal with issues of step parenting. You can almost imagine that the child does not trust so much the other new step parent. Sometimes, depending also the circumstances of what actually happened, whether there was death or whether there was divorce or something like that, or separation, there is a lack of trust of the new person. And so I will say parenting by itself, it's a challenge, but when you bring it as step parenting, it's a bigger challenge.
Yeah, it's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah, it becomes a bigger challenge, and therefore it's critical. So I always say, when it comes to parenting, so you've got one who is the real parent, and you've got a step parent who is below. And as you look into what is going to happen, is that this is how it happens when they start living together. There is a need to create a balance so that these two can come at the same level. And the way to do that is to make sure that the real parent is the one who deals with issues of discipline, and the step parent deals with issues of rewards.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm gonna go to take you shopping and spoil you and do whatever, it's done by the step parent. Whereas the idea of the parent, the real parent, is to make sure that you create a discipline, and these two end up creating a little bit of a balance, so that in time, when the balance has been created, then it's easy for either of them to do issues of discipline. But before then, it is important that the one who is the real parent deals with issues of discipline, and the other one deals with issues of rewards, and into that, so that it becomes helpful. And it is not easy. It is not easy to create this balance and to bring it all together, and it's important that that balance is found in time.
And as you said, you need to create, like, now you have to build a bond with someone who's not necessarily your child, but is now your new child. And you have to build that bond, and first you have to start off like that, and then get to the disciplining once you guys have a strong bond and trust. And so the next question is similar. It's, what are the pros and cons of being a step parent in the long
run? I would say, when a step parent, one time I wrote something on our Facebook page, something about, I think it was something like, may God bless all of those step parents who treat their stepchildren like their very own. Oh, that really trended for a long time. It also opened up a lot of things, a lot of emotions for many people who feel that they were ill-treated somehow by step-parents. I remember one friend of mine, she's quite a very successful person at the moment, and she told me the story that she grew up with a stepmother, and the father used to work somewhere away and come back on weekends. And she says during the week, she and her brother, who are stepchildren, will eat literally from the rubbish bin. That's how they were ill-treated. And it is only on the weekend, when the father is there, that they were treated like other children. And guess what? She, who was ill-treated, became more successful. And when that stepmother was now sick and ailing, old, she took the stepmother in and took care of her until she died.
Sure.
But on a positive, on the flip side, I was talking to another lady in another country, and she said to me, she was raised by the stepfather, but this stepfather loved her and embraced her like her own. She found out when she was 18, 17 that was not the real father, and met the real father then. But she says no, the stepfather remained. Now look at it. She says the stepfather and her mother divorced, but even to this day, she regards the stepfather as the real father. Even when she has got problems in life, she can she talks to that man who is the stepfather. And so in reality, when you look into the issues and the challenges around step parenting, I like the way it was put in. It is called step parenting. It's like a parent who step in when the real parent is not there. And when in cases where the step parent really steps in and becomes a real parent, loving, not discriminating and embracing, the long-term effect of that is that child embracing the step parent even more than that real parent, if the real parent exists. And I think step parenting is an opportunity for us as Christians to show our true colors of Christianity.
No, that's true. And it links to situations of, say, adopting children.
Yeah.
Normally people say they can't love adopt a child as much as a child from their own seed, right?
Yeah.
But many a times situations like that there are many situations that have gone against that, in terms of many people not knowing that this is not their real father, but they still love them more than when they know who their real father is or whatnot. So just treating them like your own child is positive for that child and does a lot for them. And yeah, thank you. Is it okay to spank teenage children who don't listen, or are there other ways to discipline them? Okay, so obviously spanking spanking is illegal. Spanking is illegal.
Yeah.
Cops! We're calling the cops!
But
They touched me! What did the distance?
we all know a lot of black parents are like, over my dead body.
Bring me the belt!
Obviously when I was young, spanking was a very hectic situation. Especially when they told you to get the belt or to bring what they're gonna beat you with.
The thin or thick?
Obviously as a teenager I've not been spanked.
I mean, that would be wild.
I haven't been a naughty boy, right? So I can't really say that, but
Hi, but what do you mean? What do you mean? You've been.
hey yo, you had your chance, man.
Sorry.
I'm hosting, man.
Okay.
There was chaos after that one. Even the people who are not in the studio ended up joining in and making their own noise.
How you put me behind the camera?
I think I always say to parents, if you're still spanking teenagers, you are doing wrong. It's too late. It's too late because, as you said in the beginning, that a young twig, you must bend it while it is still young. And spanking, apart from what the law says about spanking and corporal punishment, but I know many parents say I'll do it anyhow, but doing it and this will be issues of being grounded, denied, issues of phones or use of phones or internet or data or all of those things. Those things matter more to teenagers than they will do the issues of spanking.
Yeah.
I remember because we grew up under apartheid, so there was no stories of not spanking. So they will spank you throughout. And I remember at a certain point, spanking didn't mean a difference to me. I just like, do it until you finish, because and just move on, because it didn't make any difference. I was talking to a man, and it touched my heart just a few weeks ago. Just the last week. And he has got a stepchild who is out of order and whatever, kind of disrespecting him. He said something to him, and this stepchild came and looked at him, and the stepfather happens to be a bit short, so he looks down at him in front of him, right, standing next to him, and he was telling me that he could not control himself. He ended up slapping the boy. Now, that did not help already a fragile relationship that they had. And that's when I was talking to him about the issue of rewards and discipline and all of those things, so that it creates a balance, so that his position is not enforced because of authority of discipline, but his position is established because of love and embrace as a father. With teenagers, we need to move to the point where they say, I don't want to do wrong because I don't want to hurt my parents. And not because I'm afraid of the discipline, but I love my parents enough, I respect them enough, I don't want to hurt them, and that's why I will not do that which is wrong.
Because a lot of the times, especially now as a teenager, it doesn't hurt when you get like corporal punishment, but it hurts when like a parent says, I'm disappointed in you, or like you're making me feel sad, or certain phrases like that that hurt more in a teenager, just to see their parent like so disappointed and sad, and situations like that. So that's very true. Moving on. How about little toddlers who are stubborn and make demands to their parents? Will they outgrow that when they grow up? So it's similar.
But with toddlers, no, they must be sorted out. They must be dealt with right out from the very beginning. They must be dealt with. And I remember this embarrassing moment. I was in Lusaka on the Saturday evening. We were having a couples thing. So I'm speaking at this couples gathering. And at the end of it, we were about to pray. There was this little, those plastic scooters. There was this little thing. I mean, little thing. It probably a year and a half or so. This little thing. It was on that scooter. So zhim, zhim. And the people says, we want to pray. He keeps on saying zhim, zhim. And the parents were standing there, please, zhim, zhim. And that little thing was doing that thing throughout prayer. And I look at that little thing, and I'm going to kill this thing. I look at this thing, and this thing is running, is ruining the whole gathering. And I'm thinking to myself, if I find this little thing by myself, I'm gonna kill it. Because the parents never taught them the discipline when they are at home. So it's embarrassing in front of the people. It's like, oh no, he's so stubborn. Oh no, he's doing that and whatever. It's very embarrassing. I would say to parents, when it comes to discipline, let your word be law, particularly for the little things. Because those little things don't have Jesus yet. They're not saved yet. They are born in sin. They still need to be saved.
Yes, sir.
They still need to be saved. They still need to know Jesus.
Come on,
So they
yes, sir.
so they are still in sin, and that's why you need to bring some Jesus into them. And bring them to order.
Don't be mistaken. He is a loving person. he just says things.
But it's a thing that I think I picked up, because I also cannot tolerate unruly toddlers.
Rubbish. Sorry.
I can't tolerate unruly toddlers. And the thing is that it's not my place to discipline
you.
I don't know. I have this cousin that when he was younger, he was very unruly. And obviously I was younger as well, but I was not as mad like that. I tried to stay out of its way, allow it to do what it wanted, but Mr. Mashudu here, director of Living Power, ladies and gentlemen, decided to take matters into his own hands and was like, listen here, boy, you ain't gonna do this while I'm here. And I kid you not, that little thing came and sat on his lap and was quiet.
At the tender age of 2.
At the tender age of 2, Magnum disciplined him without. It was mad. It was mad. So yes, in conclusion, beat Jesus into your toddlers. Next question: does good parenting guarantee well-behaved children in the future?
I always look at parenting in this way. I look at parenting as somebody who is got a field, a farm, a field. And I've got a little piece of land in Venda, and I've not planted anything. Yes, you know. It's a beautiful piece of land next to water, but I've not done anything. So what grows there is weeds and forest and whatever. And that's what happens. If you have got a piece of land and you never plow anything, you cannot expect a harvest unless it's by accident of nature, as we often find in Venda, that you might be walking around the bush and find a mango tree and those things because of whatever happens in accidents of nature. Maybe somebody was walking past eating a mango and throw it the remains, and you know it end up being a mango tree. But by accident of nature, you can get a good result. But if you plow a piece of land and you make sure that you plant the seed and you water the seed, you have got the right to expect a harvest because you have done the work of plowing. So, but sometimes even after you plowed, watered, and expect a harvest, a worm can come in and eat away the crop. We have heard of this locust thing, which was in East Africa and other areas. Locusts can come and eat up your whole crop. But at least you have planted and watered. So in the same applies with parenting. If you do nothing, expect a forest. But if you do something, you can expect a harvest. But even after you've done the best you can, it is possible that a worm or locust can come and eat your crop, and the children don't turn out right, but at least you've done the best you can.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's more of a personal thing. If you know that you have done the best for your children, then you shouldn't feel guilty when they turn out the way they did, because you can honestly say that you did the best you could.
Yeah.
And, this last-ish question, my question is based on kids disciplining. Okay, so I thought we were done with this, but I would like to know how should one discipline a child, even if that person is not a parent to the child, or perhaps a sibling?
Okay. That's an interesting one. Obviously there are times when as their siblings whose gap is so wide, you feel like a parent. There's a gap maybe of 10 years or 15 years and so on and so on. Here are basic principles of discipline which should be applied in any instance of discipline. Number one, discipline with love. Let the person you are, or the child or whoever, not doubt the fact that your intention is that you love the person. Your motive is that you love the person. So first and foremost, discipline with love. Disciplining is should be different from punishment. Punishment, I have no interest on what happens to you at the other end. But discipline, I'm trying to bring you back to discipline. I'm trying to bring you back to the place where you're supposed to be. So firstly, you must do it with love. Secondly, you must not discipline in anger. Don't react to the issue of what the person has done. It's always better to discipline when you've calmed down and things are, and deal with the issue of discipline so that you can actually understand. Thirdly, explain the charges, the crime committed,
Yeah.
and then give judgment on the kind of discipline required for the kind of charges that have been done.
Yeah, because a lot of the time they beat you and you don't know why.
Yeah, yes. So sometimes parents are stressed, so they just release the stress in the child. So in reality, explain the charges, and so that the other can understand. Number 4, if it is a case of both parents, let parents agree on the kind of discipline that they should do to the children. Let the parents let the parents be together. They should not differ on the issue of discipline, because that can divide the children. Because generally, when one parent is executing discipline, if the other one is there, they will look at the other parent to see if there's sympathy. Then they will say that one is a better parent. So I always argue that if, as a parent, you come back home and you find that the other parent is spanking the child, like, just add 2 more. It's showing solidarity to say we stand together in terms of discipline. It's contrary to what we grew up with. We grew up with an environment where people used to say, the mothers particularly, they will say, when your father comes back, I'll tell him. What you're doing, I'll tell your father. And so like that. So that means the mother is nicer, the father is the one who's a discipline. But they must be together. They must agree on the issue of discipline. So it is therefore important that the outcome thereof is what is desired, which is what God, what you want from the parent, which is a positive result from the child.
No, thank you. I'll just have to add one more question.
Yeah.
Right? I know we're pressed for time, but this is the question that I really always wanted to ask. Do you think it's wise, for lack of a better word, to have, like, especially people that are thinking about having more children, to have more children in this certain society and the world we're living in, with all the issues we're going through in terms of, racism, poverty, and gender-based violence, and all kinds of things. Especially if you are thinking about having, especially if you have, like, say, a black girl who's born, especially because life is harder for black girls. So don't you think it would be better?
Oh, I'm sure you were saying that so that your sister, on the other hand, you can add some points.
No, it's a fact. It's a fact. Do not be shaken, sir. Stand your ground.
Yes.
In terms of opting for the solution of, say, adoption or other situation of just not having kids, or because bringing a life into this world is,
one of the things it's a very good question, Thendo. One of the things I've been saying to the couples that I see for premarital counseling, I say to them, if you won't have time to raise your kids, don't have them. You see, we're living in a society and a time where people are busy, and making money is most important and most critical. And so what they do is, like, you give birth, it's like you drop the child and you don't care whether it lives with the nanny or you dump them to some daycare center and you move on. From the age of 3 months or 4 months, that child is held by somebody else, and you work from 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock. You see that little thing sleeping, and you move on with your life. Who is raising the child? Whose values are they going to be imparted on that child? So, are we surprised when the children turned out to be contrary to what we are? Because we never had time to raise them. So I always say that, unlike before, where we used to have children for the sake of them taking care of us, they don't take care of us, they won't take care of us, you have to take care of yourself. So you don't really need, that motivation. So if you won't have time to raise them, otherwise you can raise rascals. That can be trouble to society. I have a distant relative who the grandmother was shot dead by the grandson. He wanted the old age pension money, you know. So and it is those kind of situations where these children who are raised themselves or raised by television, because the parents are never there. They think that getting a DSTV channel with the kids, whatever, it's a way of raising a child. And who is raising the child? Whose ideas? Where are you leading the child to? And many times people even wonder, how did our children learn to drink? They learn at home because every 15 minutes is an advertisement for alcohol, which shows that's a better way of life. So all of those things, I say to parents, if you don't have time, don't have them.
Yeah.
Because you can create society. We've heard in the media of one big person in the media who was killed by the son, who wanted drugs, who was a drug addict, and so on and so on. You know, those things, those are the kind of problems you can create for yourself in society. So it's better not to have them. Apart from the other ills that are there in society, if you are not going to be able to chanak them and guide them in the right path, it is better not to have them.
No, that is true.
Question from behind the camera. Sorry, I just want to add a question by what you said. Okay, fine, it's not my time.
Continue.
I'll ask it after then.
Continue, man.
No, I'll ask it after. It's fine.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Mashudu, for being here, and Gundo behind the camera. Thank you for joining us for this wonderful session of parenting. I hope you learned a lot. I certainly learned a lot. This kind of session, how frequent will it be? Obviously, you can't afford me, so, and we can't afford you all the time. So it's a thing of, budget cuts. So this sort of thing will not happen frequently. But
But let me just say, I want to thank you, Thendo, for hosting the show. Oh yeah, he did well. He did well. You can hear the people in the background, the hired audience.
No.
Thendo was worried because of the standard set by Gundo last time.
What standard? What standard?
And he came in today and did well. And thank Thendo for that. And until next week, in the next segment of Relationship Minute, we want to thank you for being with us. May the Lord God bless you.
Thank you. Yeah, we lost professionality.
That was Mashudu Ravhengani, proudly brought to you by Living Power Ministries. You can find us at livingpower.org.za or on WhatsApp at +27 78 215 5737. Living Power, empowering mankind to unleash its full potential.